And we are live. I want to thank everybody for joining us. This is the Polite Society podcast. We're going to be recording episode 308. And I wish we had a big name rifle company as a guest we could interview on this show. That would be really cool, but we don't. We are going to be recording episode 308 here in just a moment. I want to thank our advertisers before we get going here. The ABN family of businesses. Of course, ABN Army Surplus is the one that sponsors us as a part of the show. Concealment Solutions, Crusader Weaponry, New Jersey Second Amendment Society, the Firearms Safety Institute, and of course the Firearms Policy Coalition. We will be going here in just a second. I want to remind everybody that you can hit the Q&A app if you're watching us live on Google+. You can hit the Q&A app and send us a question right into the Hangout. We'll answer it live on the air. Also, if you are watching on YouTube, you can comment on the YouTube, and we will get that. It takes a few seconds longer, sometimes a minute or two longer, but I will get those, and we'll answer those on the air as well. So are we ready to kick off the intro, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I didn't read it, didn't write it.
I
Cool.
wrote
Go.
Okay.
Is someone on the live page? Is Susan there? I didn't even hear her. Hi, Susan.
She's. I've got the only headset. We're not at ABN right now.
Yeah.
I'm in Baltimore. She's in Sioux Falls.
Oh.
And I've got the only headset that will plug into a laptop. And so for the next few weeks, she won't be on the show. In a couple weeks, she'll be back when we're recording at ABN again.
So you need me to watch the live page?
Yeah, I can't. I've got show notes and the Hangout that I watch. So, all right, and I need to close my email program because we're getting emails even as we start the show. And coming in 5. Hi, and welcome to the Polite Society podcast presented by the Firearms Policy Coalition. We're recording this one live on Super Bowl Sunday, February 1st, 2014. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Rachel Malone, and on tonight's show we'll talk about one of Bloomberg's anti-gun groups messing up again, and how this time it could land them in court.
I'm John Richardson, and we'll talk about the possible end of Operation Choke Point.
I'm Rob Morse, and in one of our DGUs, a 74-year-old successfully defends himself against a home invader.
I'm Gary Doherty, and we'll have a lot of listener email to cover.
So, climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 308 of the Polite Society podcast starts right now. Da-da.
Or a little later.
Da-da. All right. Drink a soda. Let's go straight into personal news. I think we're going to go, I just used the order on the bottom of my screen. We're going to go Gary, John, Rachel, Rob, and me.
Okay.
Here we go. Hey, and welcome back. This is a personal news segment of the podcast. Gary, you're up first to this time. It's been a while since you've been on the show. What have you been up to since the last time we talked, man?
Not much. Working with a designer on redesigning the website a little bit for my training, and not much shooting, just kind of busy. So I really, unfortunately, nothing exciting to report.
Okay. Well, that leaves John up next. What's been up with you, man?
Well, I guess the only thing shooting related I did was use a discount coupon that I picked up at SHOT Show to get a high quality trigger from ALG Defense at 30% off. Other than that, it was back to the routine of work and teaching.
Okay. What are you going to put that trigger in?
I'm going to put it in one of my ARs. I'm just not sure which one. Because I've got a couple of their, I think, called mil-spec triggers, which are really nice. No grittiness. This is what they call their quality trigger, which puts it up another level. I'm not into the league where I can spend $250 for a trigger, but 45, yeah, I can do that.
How is the lightweight coming? You were going to give us some articles on that.
I still have to find the lightweight stock that I got sent for review. But after that, I mean, I did talk to the people at Double Star, and they have their own lightweight that's about 5.5 pounds. And mine at 6 pounds 5 ounces with the optic, they said was pretty darn good, given that I included the optic in the weight. They don't.
Right.
So,
I want to build one. Is your lightweight as rugged as any other, or is it more delicate in any way?
it doesn't appear to be more delicate.
Okay.
But I don't know how well carbon fiber would stand up as opposed to forged or milled aluminum.
Right. I'm just looking forward to it. I'd like to do something like that. So any news that comes out, I'm looking forward for it.
Okay.
I know in cars and car parts, carbon fiber is used a lot, and I'm a gearhead. And one thing about carbon fiber, it is incredibly strong. It is incredibly durable. However, when it breaks, it really breaks. It shatters.
Mm.
And that would be my only concern. I'm with Gary. I'm anxious for you to get everything together and to hear about how it works after you get several hundred rounds through it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be fine until you start throwing it over fences and that kind of stuff.
I couldn't even get over the fence.
See?
Yeah, no zombie run and gun for that.
I think my age and ankle have conspired against that.
All right. Well, next up then is Rachel. It's a weekend show. Rachel's here.
I know. What's weird with that?
What's been
It's
up
good
with
to
you,
be
Rachel?
here. Well, the past few days I have been a musician, so I've been just dreaming about range time and listening in on the rodeo that's been going on in the Capitol, especially in the Senate among gun rights people, while I'm sitting on the piano bench playing for about 45 high school string students. Playing
Now,
with them. So that's my life.
We were talking before the show. Yeah, you discussed it on the show we released just this morning as we recorded this. But you were going to be playing for well, you just said 45 kids, but you played a lot of different
Different pieces of music.
Yes.
Yes.
Explain to the listeners exactly what you did again.
Yeah, so it's a UIL competition for the high school string players. So the event was yesterday, and they had 5 rooms of judges, and they filed students through each room all day. So I performed as a piano accompanist for 45 of those students, which involved playing 45 pieces and rehearsing a couple of times with each of those students during the couple weeks previous. So that's I think I estimated 300 to 400 pages of music.
Yikes!
Wow.
Yeah, it's what I do. That's I want to make one of those Facebook memes about what it really means to be a musician. You know, people have this idea. Like, this is what it means to be a musician. Your back aches. You sit on a bench and you try to keep up with people who don't have good rhythm.
Billy Joel is known for being a piano man. That was his song, among the many. But he's known for giving long performances. I don't think he has anything on you for what you did yesterday.
It was a marathon.
There you go. Well, Rob, you're next up on the list, man. What's been up with you?
I cut my hand after I got back from shot. So for a while I couldn't type. I couldn't go to the range. I couldn't drive practice. So I cut the podcast short today because once I could finally type again, I had a bunch of things in my head for for the blog. That's out of my way. I haven't been talking about us enough that I ran out of business cards for the Polite Society podcast in my wallet, so I had to restock. So if you hurt my hand, evidently my mouth runs overtime.
Well, I want to give you guys kudos because Rob, inside baseball for all the listeners, Rob, John, and Rachel, you all know this, pretty much do the Wednesday recordings. And they put them together, and Rob does most of the editing. I just build the show. I put the ads in, I put the whole thing together, upload it onto our distributor's site, and it goes out into the magic of the internet. You all get it. I actually listened to that show as it came out this morning, and I think you guys did an amazing job on episode 307. I thought that was one of our better shows, and I think you all deserve some kudos for that.
Cool. Glad you liked it.
Well, thank you, Paul.
You bet. That just leaves me, and what's been up with me. I haven't been on the air since we left SHOT Show. We left Friday morning and went up through. We went to SHOT Show by what truckers, and we got a lot of them in the audience will know is the South Route. I went down through Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, stopped by the Grand Canyon, went into Las Vegas. To go home, Susan and I wanted to visit the grandkids, and so we went the North Route because weather was clear and it's shorter. So we went straight up Nevada, tiny little section of Arizona, Utah, then Wyoming, and into a bit of Nebraska, and on over to Yankton, South Dakota, where the grandkids live. Now, the reason I wanted to bring up the grandkids is I've got a granddaughter that is 13, going to be 14 here in a few months. And she is a cute little thing, and boy, do I feel sorry. She's almost dating age. I really feel sorry for any kids that want to date her because she has a dad that, imagine somebody that you would think in the Latin Kings gangs, including the Tats. He is 6'3", about 300 pounds, and a gun nut. And then you got Grandpa, who has a podcast about guns and is a gun nut. I am really feeling sorry for any boys she wants to bring around to introduce to the family.
He's got to be pretty determined.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. Got visited the grandkids, had a great time visiting them. Got home and went right out on the road again on Tuesday. Got home Sunday night, took Monday off, got a doctor's appointment taken care of. And inside for the drivers, you all know that diabetics, we have to keep our A1Cs, that's the long-term blood sugar, under 7. Went to the doctor on Monday, got test results back. For the first time in years, my A1C is at 6.4.
That's great.
Yes.
And I was super pumped about that. So there's one more medication I could take if things weren't going well, but I don't have to take that medication. My driving career has been extended for at least a few years. Then left on Tuesday, did some regional running until Friday. Friday I get this run I've been on lately, the Baltimore run. I get here on Sunday and do 2 drops Monday, 1 pickup Monday, start heading back. Well, Friday night we start hearing about this huge snowmageddon snowstorm. And I've been trying to outrun that thing all the way across.
Yeah, I thought you were pushing it.
I was pulling it behind me, bud, pulling it behind me.
That's right.
I stopped in Center Point, Iowa on Friday night. It was fairly early. I hadn't heard about this snowstorm yet. Got up about 4 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, looked at my phone as I got up, and winter storm warning. And I looked it over, thought I should really get out of here and get some miles in. I stopped last night just south of Cleveland and thought I made good progress on getting ahead of the storm. Woke up this morning with about 1.5 inches of snow on the ground, and it was still coming. So I had to really hustle and try to get. Now, here in Baltimore, it's 45 degrees.
Yeah.
It's cloudy. It might, they're talking rain, maybe a little freezing rain tonight, but not much. I just happened to get lucky and get ahead of it. There's some people, they're saying this thing's supposed to have 15 inches in Cleveland and some parts of western Pennsylvania. Back home in Sioux Falls, Susan says we've had over 8. So I got lucky, and I've been on mainly dry roads and just a little bit of snow this morning.
Thank God you don't have to go up to Boston area.
Oh, yeah. Well, I wouldn't want to because of the gun laws, but yeah. One last thing I want to get to, and John mentioned this on the end of the last show, which I know because I actually listened this morning, and that's we are going to be making some changes to the show. Those of you that subscribe to the show on podcast, on Stitcher, on iTunes, whatever you use to get the show, if you already subscribe, you will not notice a single change. Those of you that catch us live, like several people are right now on YouTube and Google+, not a single change. Everything stays the same. If you want to recommend us to your friends, we're going to make one thing a little easier. We're going to be breaking the show up, and we're going to be putting the news, the interviews, and the DGUs up on the website as separate audio downloads. If you only want to listen to just the DGUs, if that's what, and a lot of our listeners, that's what we get a lot of feedback on. If you want to listen to just the DGUs, you'll be able to do that. There'll still be an ad. I'm gonna put an ad in front of each one. If you just want to catch the news, or maybe just one segment of the news, you can do that. That'll be coming up in a few weeks once I get home and can make the necessary changes in the way our distributor Libsyn does things. But that is coming, and I'm really kind of excited about that. And let's see, I think that kind of does it for the personal news segment. Before we head off to break, I do want to mention that we do have training classes coming up in Sioux Falls. May 16th to the 17th, Bob Main and Ben Branham are going to be doing Beyond Concealed Carry. You can register for that one at handgunworld.com. August 1st and 2nd, Ken Kowalski, John Hottaway, and Chaz Murray are coming up to do Citizen First Response. That's a first-time class. That's never been done before. I'm really excited to be having that class August 1st and 2nd. You can register for that one at nighthawkcustomtraining.com. And then August 15th to the 16th, Kathy Jackson is going to be coming back up to give her class up in Sioux Falls, the Cornered Cat class, and you can register for that one at Susan at politicsandguns.com. Send her an email. She'll get you all the information you need, and we'll get you registered for the class that way. So we are going to go ahead and step aside for break. When we come back, once again, no shock, we've got a ton of news, and we'll get to that all right after this. How am I doing on my ums and ahs?
Very
I didn't
good.
hear any.
Yeah, I didn't notice any.
Good. Now that I have it in the front of my mind, how do we want to break these up? Do we want to, because Susan's not here to read, so.
Give one of us will take 3, the next one will take 3, the next one will take 3, and
I'll do that. That's cool. I want to take the first 3 though, because I want to talk about Bloomy.
Cool.
Okay. Gary, are you up to reading?
Yeah, of course. Oh yeah, actually you're right. Last time we talked, that bronchitis was.
How you doing?
No, I'm good. No, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks. I forgot about that. I was not up to reading back then, whenever it was when we talked about that.
Sorry, I didn't ask first thing.
No. Stop. Don't be silly.
Well, no. Gary, that's how I feel. I went, oh shit, you were sick. No, just a little bit. Okay.
Well, back then I was really dying.
All right. Let's go.
1 second. Okay. We've gotten several emails and I wanted to basically glance at them. Here we go. Coming back in 5. Hey, and welcome back for the first news segment in our show. We're going to get started here, and I'm going to start reading. The first one is John Adine, and he's been on the show before. You've all heard him. He posted on the website Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership. His article is called A Tale of Two Cities. We've reported when doctors defended themselves. John reminded us of when they could not defend themselves. Quote, we should not have to run afoul of the law or hospital policy to be able to defend ourselves in our workplaces, unquote. Medical professionals can follow these pro-rights doctors at www.drgo.us.
John is one of those people who's just so professional in his research, but he's very, very intelligent about the way he studies the matter and so diligent about working in his area to bring gun rights to doctors and people who work in hospitals. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. I happen to meet a pediatrician who has a blog, a gun-friendly blog, out in Las Vegas, and she was at the SHOT Show. I don't have her card in front of me, so I can't quite remember it, but she did note that she had to be careful because of the American Academy of Pediatrics, which is very anti-gun.
Yes.
And she also is very good with her own patients, asking, not do you have a gun in your house, but have you trained your children about guns?
I like it.
Very cool.
Or about gun safety. And I'll have to dig up her card, but she was very, very interesting. She was introduced to me by a friend of mine from Arizona who had participated in a 3-gun competition with her.
Oh, interesting. I have a really biased view of Texas. I met Dr. Adine. He wanted to defend his staff and patients in a hospital, so he got active and started a petition to try and change hospital policy. Sort of reminds me of a musician we know who didn't like the way the Texas Senate was being lobbied, so she started lobbying it. So if the rest of Texas is like this, I'm feeling really foolish living in California.
Yeah, I guess we Texans kind of have a mind of our own, and if we decide to do something, we're just going to go do it.
Well, our next story then, former mayor of New York, Michael Guns Protect Me, but not the Bloomberg's Everytown Group had to do quite a bit of backpedaling and may be in line for a lawsuit in the near future. Last week they put out a study, and quoting directly from that study, Everytown monitored guns for sale on 3 primary websites, and in a sting-like move posted 24 guns for sale on Popular Arms website between July 28th and October 9th. Some 169 potential buyers responded. Investigators hired by the group checked criminal backgrounds and found that 7 of the 169 were prohibited by law from possessing firearms. By extrapolating the data, quote, gun sales transacted on just 3 websites put an estimated 126 guns into the hands of felons and domestic abusers in Vermont, and very likely more in this year alone, unquote, the report concluded. Now, the only problem is that at least 6 of those 24 advertised guns were from one single FFL in Mount Holly, Vermont. Not only did Bloomy's group pretty much just make things up to fit their story, now they may face a lawsuit from the owner of Crossfire Arms, who has hired a lawyer to explore his options.
Yeah, what Bloomberg's group did was take copyrighted photos which had the watermark for Crossfire Arms right in it. And let's
Oh,
not
my
forget that as an FFL, they are required, since they're a dealer, to conduct NICS checks on every purchaser.
Right, and now 6 out of 24, they're basing their huge scientific survey on 24 firearms. 1/4 of them come from one FFL, which throws their survey way out of balance. It's just the whole thing, they couldn't even prove that one gun was sold in a method that got a gun into the hands of the wrong person.
Exactly. I mean, these were potential buyers. There was nothing about whether or not they were the actual buyers. Were they the people who actually bought the gun off of, whether it's Gunbroker or Arms List? They just said, these are potential gun buyers and they're criminals.
You know, this seems to me like there's a bunch of cars parked outside the bar. There's a bunch of people inside the bar drinking. There's a whole lot of potential drunk drivers there.
Mm-hmm.
Paul, I think that's a very narrow point of view. You're going to let facts get in the way of a good headline.
No,
You're
no.
not seeing this.
Yes. Yes, I'm guilty of that.
Well,
All right.
In
You
addition
got to
to
change that attitude if you're going to fit in.
In
Okay.
addition to that, I know the 4 other people that I'm looking at right now, and I know that they would not sell a firearm to somebody that they were not comfortable with,
Right.
that had given any indication that they shouldn't be owning firearms legally. So, in addition to everything, Bloomberg just basically called all firearm owners scumbags, and would sell a gun to a criminal if we had the chance. And that's just not true. So, I mean, in addition to everything else, they're just saying anybody who would sell a gun online would just couldn't wait to jump at the chance to sell it to a criminal. I mean, that's a personal attack. I really have a problem with that.
And
At least they're consistent.
Yes.
I mean,
consistently
come on.
wrong.
Shannon already told us that all gun owners are just gun criminals waiting to happen.
And wait till they get registration in Florida. But
Pardon me while I don't hold my breath waiting for that one.
they're also attacking sales between friends. I have sold a rifle to Rob
Mm-hmm.
because Rob is out of state. Rob did go through a NICS check. Rob, if I'm correct, in California, you also had to wait 10 days before you could pick it up.
Yeah, I wait 10 days to buy my third gun. Yeah, right.
Because that
Mosin.
keeps everybody safe.
Right.
Because
A gun who's
everybody's-
older than my grandparents.
Yeah, and everybody's taking down 7-Elevens with these dangerous Mosins.
Yeah.
Our next story, we've reported on Operation Choke Point in the past. It was an effort by the Justice Department in conjunction with the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation to label gun stores, among other businesses, as suspect and risky. This past Wednesday, the FDIC backed off and reversed their stance. They said that banks should assess risk on a case-by-case basis. The FDIC said banks shouldn't decline, quote, to provide banking services to entire categories of customers without regard to the risks presented by an individual customer or the financial institution's ability to manage the risk. Representative Blaine Luetkemeyer, a Republican from Missouri, had introduced legislation to outlaw the practice. In a statement he released Wednesday, he said he had met with the FDIC chairman and vice chair. In that meeting, they had acknowledged wrongdoing on the agency's part and would be having their inspector general look into who was responsible for it. Luetkemeyer plans to keep going forward with his legislation on the matter.
This
You know, I'm
bothers me
thinking
a
it
lot.
takes a lot of Yeah.
You're first.
I think it takes a lot of pressure for a chairman to admit wrongdoing on an agency's part. I mean,
Yeah.
that's good pressure.
Kind of like the Good Pressure. I'm sorry to keep going back, because it was a great episode. Kind of like the Good Pressure, the governor or the in Texas, where the backed off of, we're not gonna.
Lieutenant Governor.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Governor. Yes. If you have somebody who's squishy on an issue you can't trust, well, they can be moved with pressure. So apply pressure the right direction to move in the right direction.
Remember, these are regulations that were never codified in law. They're administrative regulations passed down by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Since they can make near arbitrary administrative decisions that have massive effects on banks, they get to act as a tyrant. They can act as a god with their phone and their pen, and that power needs to be taken away.
I was reading a little further into this story, and where they had found out that a number of churches and nonprofit organizations were also impacted by Operation Choke Point because they dealt in a lot of cash.
Yeah.
Well, of course, people put cash into the collection plate. Yeah, they might occasionally put, the envelope with the check, but just as often they're going to throw, a 5, a 10, or a 20 out of their pocket, which is why churches get robbed.
John, do you remember earlier in the year a movie came out about IRS abuse? Well, it sounds to me like the FDIC is just a half step behind the IRS.
Mm-hmm. And they're all working in conjunction with the Department of Justice.
Yeah.
Well, all these things are happening, and I don't know how the president manages to stay isolated from these things, because they don't just happen in a vacuum. The conversations have to be taking place. I mean, probably most of them are smart enough to not to send emails anymore, but come on.
That's what cocktail parties are for.
No, literally, weren't they meeting like across the street from the White House? There was some little deli over there, and that's where they would meet, so that way the meeting would not show in the log of visitors at the White House?
It could very well be.
Yeah.
Not only that, but Google will give a Gmail address to anybody. You can have 5, 6 of them if you want.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So, Kentucky is taking steps to speed up the process of getting a concealed carry permit. The Kentucky State Police are now taking applications online and will now issue permits within 15 days rather than the old 60 days for paper applications. Applicants are still required to pass an in-person training course on Kentucky law and basic firearm safety, undergo a background check, and have a valid email address. The program, from which began in mid-November, has had several hundred people take advantage of it. The sponsor of the law that enabled the changes, former State Senator Sarah Beth Gregory, defended the program against Democrat critics, saying, "The faster we can be responsive to people's applications, the better the system is. Speeding up the process to approve people who should be approved is not a bad thing."
I like this. It's not constitutional carry, but I like the way the senator's thinking. Because what do they call it? It's the opposite. It's foregone opportunity costs. John, you're closer to an economist that would understand what these are called. If your neighbor is getting death threats, going, great, we can get her a permit in 60 days, means you're hanging her out. She's exposed as being defenseless for all that time.
Right.
You can't have constitutional carry. Can we at least make a quick decision?
And I read the story, and the Kentucky State Police said they are not running into any difficulty running the background checks within the 15 days required to issue the permit without having to take on extra manpower.
Yeah.
Right, because the I in NICS is instant, right?
Yeah. And I think Kentucky's one of those states that is using the NICS database for their carry permits. I mean, some other states use other databases, but as I remember, Kentucky does use the NICS database.
Well, we're at 120 days here in Illinois unless you submit fingerprints in addition to your application that costs you an additional $55, which means they will speed it up to 90 days.
Wow. Now, in North Carolina, we do have to submit fingerprints. That is a requirement. Or our initial application has to have fingerprints. And it can take up to 90 days. I think my first one took about 85. My renewal took about 45 days or less.
But wouldn't, I mean, in my mind, wouldn't submitting fingerprints in addition to your name and address and all the other data they collect, wouldn't that speed up the process rather than slow it down?
I would think so.
One of the issues we're running into in California is related to an issue they've seen in Arizona. We now have so many illegal immigrants that identity theft is rampant. The INS has said, oh, no, you can't prosecute an illegal immigrant for stealing someone's identity. You go, really? Why? So the advantage of fingerprints is they can instantly resolve the double claim of identity. I've had fingerprints many, many times for security background checks. I had to get it through the FBI when I was a foster parent. So it can happen really fast if somebody wants to get it done.
And especially now with modern software where they're now not only taking this fingerprints digitally,
Right.
but they can analyze them digitally.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And if you're in the system, oh yeah, your fingers haven't changed in the last 7 years since you were printed. Next.
Right.
Well, I do think we're going to go ahead and set it aside there. We got more news to come, and we'll get to that right after this. Gary, good job keeping a straight voice, man. I could hear you struggling.
Yeah. Well, I was. Yes, there was something in the beginning that made me laugh, but I think, Rob, you might have gotten Paul's herpes.
Uh-oh.
There were a couple.
Yeah, right. You ummed and ummed and ummed. I'm like, who's that?
Bad dog.
I thought maybe you were starting to giggle because what Rob and I were doing right below the story. He put in bread instead of break, and so I put in wine.
Yeah. I saw. Yeah, no, it was the 15-day part. 15 days instead of 60 when we're at 90 and 120 over here. I said, oh my God, it's just another way to keep citizens disarmed. And it's
Hey, why don't we have a podcast where we talk about shit like that?
Just cross the Ohio River Bridge from Metropolis to Paducah. Go from 120 to 15.
Yep.
Well, I didn't mention it while we were going through it, but it's 5 business days in South Dakota, and it's for both the initial and the renewal.
Oh, thank you. You saved me having to buy a new monitor because I would have punched a monitor.
And you guys have to pay what? $5, $10, $15?
$10. And it's good for 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's $10 every 5 years. All right. We're ready to go into Let me get my stopwatch back up here.
Stopwatch up.
Okay. Gary, you just want to bring us in and fly right into it?
Yeah. Into 11. Welcome back to the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. Our next news story is the DEA and ATF considered using license plate cameras at gun shows to aid gun trafficking investigations. DEA head Michelle Lionheart denies that they ever implemented the idea. The potential program came to light due to a Freedom of Information request by the ACLU, which was looking into a DEA database that tracked the movement of vehicles within the United States. The primary goal of the database is asset forfeiture, and it has been used by state and local law enforcement agencies since 2009. Asked about the program, the NRA said they would have no comment until they learned more about it. At which point, I'm sure they will have a huge comment.
From their lawyer. Do you guys remember a Florida resident was profiled and pulled over in Maryland because he was a gun owner? And
Yes.
there were many similar residents that were hassled as they drove through Maryland. Well,
Yes.
I live in a tourist town, San Diego, California. We have years of license plate data that goes back, and now we have a local lawyer saying, you've got the data. I want you to give it to me so that I can search to see if my client is innocent. And now they're going, uh-oh, do we have to keep that data because it could exonerate someone, or do we have to destroy it because, you know, it's privacy data, where you went, what you did. It's a mess, and lawyers don't know what to do.
There's been a lot of talk about that. Because we have a lot of tollways in Illinois, and we have an electronic payment system
Yes.
that keeps track of where you were.
iPass.
Yeah, iPass. And there's different systems everywhere. I also have one in Texas, Toll Tag, because my parents live down there. But there's been, I mean, it's been around for years and years, but there's been controversy about whether or not that data is usable in things like divorce proceedings and things like that. I haven't heard anything recently, but I know there was a lot of talk when those first came out.
You know, when Rob was talking about San Diego, that was my first thought, that divorce lawyers would use it to say, well, the responding party was seen within, you know, a mile of who he or she was having an affair with.
Yeah.
Well, and I hate to break the news to anybody that has a smartphone, more specifically a Google or a Android smartphone, but Google Maps tracks you by default, and you can go. I will share it to the show's Facebook page when I can find it again. It's been a long time since I've seen it. I've left it open because I think it's kind of cool to see where I've been, being a trucker. But it will track you through your cell phone, and it knows where you've been for a couple years.
Wow.
Well, it's like why the military banned their soldiers and sailors from using smartphones to take pictures in the war zone, because they would have geographic designations on all the photos.
Right.
Yep.
And they could then track back where, you know, the area of operations, especially ones that have been posted on Facebook.
Did you guys see the Facebook meme that goes, how are you, honey? It goes, oh, I don't feel well. I'm getting ready for bed. Where are you? And then the other side goes, standing behind you at the bar. Yeah.
Oopsie, busted.
Like that.
Well, you know, the interesting jump of all this is the government wants to be able to track us in many different ways. You know, they want a gun registry. They want to track our vehicles, all that, and then an app recently has gained popularity called Waze, W-A-Z-E.
I use
That
it
allows-
myself.
What's that?
I use it myself.
That allows people to post where police officers are parked.
Yes.
And the government doesn't like that at all.
With that Waze app, yes, that is part of it. It'll allow you where, more specifically, not where police are parked, but where there's a speed trap, where they're actually ticketing. They're hiding and ticketing is what that was designed for.
They're engaging in revenue enhancement.
Exactly. What it will also do, and what I like it for, is it will tell you if there's been an accident, if there's a backup, if traffic is just plain stopped. It'll suggest routes around it. Not always truck routes, which is so great for me, but it is a fantastically useful app, and I know a lot of drivers that use it. I can kind of see where the police might have an issue with, all you got to do is look and see where there's been reported that police are. But you know what? It's only updated for about 20 minutes, and if you're sitting in one spot for more than 20 minutes and not writing a ticket, I think you might want to consider moving anyway.
Yeah, like I said, I thought it was interesting that they don't like being tracked.
I just want to know where my congressman is all the time and who's buying him lunch.
Good point.
That would be, you're going to want something like, what's the name of that app now? I'll see if I can pull it up quick. You're going to want Swarm or Foursquare for that. Just get your congressman to register on Foursquare, though.
Oh, okay.
I just got a text from Susan. She says it's already up. She just posted the Google tracking link on the Polite Society Podcast Facebook page. So if you want to turn that off on your Android phone, just look at that post on our page, and you can find out how to do that.
Cool. Excellent tip. Good. Our next story is if we published gun ownership underground. Our next story is if we pushed gun ownership underground for 30 years, there would be no gun ownership in 40 years. That is why we ask you to take friends shooting, particularly young friends. We want to build the culture of responsible gun ownership, and the anti-rights politicians want to destroy that culture. New York Assemblywoman Linda Rosenthal introduced a bill to ban children under 12 years of age from gun shows. The bill has been referred to committee.
I'm hearing a civil rights lawsuit here. So you're telling a nursing mother that she can't attend a gun show?
Oh.
I've seen children in strollers at gun shows.
How about children carried by a mom in a Snuggly? You can take your 12-year-old and his friends to the gun show. It's an outing. It's a Boy Scout event. It's a Cub Scout event. But they have to be left home alone if they're 11? How does that promote child safety?
Especially,
go ahead.
I was just going to say that look at this is what I love to do, is to take their constituency, the ones they play to. What about the single mom that wants to go to the gun show?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're discriminating against the women who want to go, who have kids.
What about our right to peaceably assemble?
Mm-hmm. Oh, maybe that wasn't guaranteed if you're under a certain age.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. I'm thinking if this was Texas, the bill never would have been referred to committee if they weren't sure they had all the votes already to pass it. Because apparently that's how our lieutenant governor works.
So in Texas, things are not referred to committee, whereas in other places they're referred to committee, which is where they die.
Depending, yeah. But, yeah, if you can withhold it from being referred to a committee, then that just stops it, one step in front of committee.
Hmm.
Yeah, well, I mean, yes, the lawsuits and the rights and those things, but come on. It's a gun show. So what are you going to do next? We can't take kids under 12 years old to a movie where there's guns? Come
Maybe
on.
not.
They can't shoot.
If
I mean, are we
you
going to
can-
start mandating
that's
ages
what-
on shooting?
I hadn't seen this story. I'm reading it. I'm expecting it to say 12-year-old people from the gun range, and I get to the word shows, and I'm like, what?
Yeah. Well, what about academy? What about gun shops?
Yeah.
I mean, really?
Can't take a kid to buy a sleeping bag.
Oh,
Or a soccer ball.
interesting. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Okay,
Dick's
so
Sports
basically
Authority.
we're going to start treating sporting goods stores like porn shops. You
Yeah,
have to have what, a
exactly.
little back room where you keep the firearms? Oh,
Yes.
stop
Got to
it.
have black covering on your windows so they can't see in.
Yeah. Show IDs to get in.
Yeah, are
Proof
you
that
going to
you're
make a
above
12-year-old
12?
have an ID? Mm-hmm.
You know, an 11-year-old looks a lot like a 12-year-old. How are you going to be sure?
You need a junior ID card?
And some 13-year-olds from Eastern Kentucky look a lot older than they are, especially when they're on the run.
Yes.
Well, in our next story, we have an update to a DGU we talked about recently. The owner of Shiza Pistol will reopen her store for training after her husband was killed in a shootout with some armed robbers a few weeks ago. Owner Rebecca Beaker is reopening the training portion of her Shawnee, Kansas business and is not sure when the gun shop portion will reopen. Quote, "We will not stay down, but we'll get back up and fight." Beaker expressed through a spokesperson and on social media.
I remember this lady's comments after her husband was murdered in their shop. She said, "Don't tell me about the evil of guns. My husband just died saving my life."
Was that a powerful statement?
Wow.
If I remember right, the owner of the gentleman that was killed
Mhm.
took, I think, two of the three. There were two of four, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm remembering right, he killed two of four that were shooting at him when he unfortunately lost his life. And I just kudos to this lady. She is not only she's obviously thinking of reopening the gun shop as well, but she's continuing on training. She wants to continue to do her work to make sure people are safe. And I want to applaud her for that.
In another update, we have some news from Virginia Citizens Defense League. President Philip Van Cleve. 11 anti-gun bills were killed late this week in separate Virginia House and Senate subcommittees. A handful of bad bills remain alive, and between the House and the Senate, let me restart that. A handful of bad bills remain alive. A handful of bad bills remain alive between the House and Senate, but most of the pro-gun bills are still alive as of now.
I thought that was a great interview you guys did with Mr. Van Cleve.
Mm-hmm.
I sincerely hope it looks like things are going their way in Virginia, and I hope they continue that way.
Absolutely. And the one semi-bad bill, which was dealing with domestic violence, which you would lose your gun rights now, it says, for 1 year, actually may be needed so that there could be a restoration of rights. And we talked with Attorney John Pierce about this in the past. If a state, you can't get your federal rights back unless the state has a process for you to get your rights back as well.
Right.
Yeah, Phil was talking about making it automatic.
Yeah.
That would be a great amendment.
Yes, it would.
Well, up in North Dakota, State Representative Dwight Kiefert introduced a bill to allow some teachers to carry concealed at school. The proposal would require teachers or staff to first undergo training with local law enforcement. Kiefert said the bill is for rural school districts where law enforcement is particularly far away from campus. As you would expect, state education officials told the State House Education Committee that they opposed the bill. Contrast the education officials' response in North Dakota with the attitude we saw in rural Texas. There, the principal said that everything that happens at home also happens at school, and his teachers can and must respond to all of it.
Remember that from the movie we watched, John?
Harold, Texas. They said when we say when you need help in seconds, the police are only minutes away. Well, in Harold, Texas, the police were 30 minutes away.
Can we not talk about this being rural?
True.
Crime does not only happen in rural places. Yes, they are farther away from police, but that has absolutely nothing to do with a crazy killer walking into a school and shooting kids. That could happen anywhere.
Yes, it can, but get your blood pressure medication ready, my friend, because in western North Dakota, there are counties that are bigger than a lot of states on the East Coast, and there's 1 or 2 deputies on patrol. Very much the same problem that rural town in Texas had, in that the police just aren't there. I'm shocked that I'm not shocked. I'm shocked that any person would take that attitude. They must be somebody from Fargo or Bismarck and are inside of town.
It was I think a state education official who said, "We don't want you making our teachers act like law enforcement." Close quote.
That's great if there were law enforcement there.
Right.
Unfortunately, in Beach, North Dakota, look it up on your maps, folks. There's nobody there.
But I've got to jump in here. I think Gary has a really good point. I think it's easier, it's like more palatable for some people to understand that it's a positive thing for teachers to carry guns when they see, hey, the police are 30 minutes away. So it kind of makes it more palatable. So it's really tempting for us to put that forward as the reason why teachers should be allowed to carry. But I don't believe that's really the reason. I believe it's a right to carry. Whether you're a teacher or a parent, that is a right. And yes, it could be a stronger reason for them to carry or for the school to ask teachers to carry, but let's not forget what our right is, and our right isn't given to us just because of circumstances that are less than we could wish for. It is a right.
I want to go back to a comment by Rob that he was saying that the education officials didn't think it was the duty of the teachers to carry or to be law enforcement. Isn't it traditionally that schools and teachers are in loco parentis, in the place of the parents? Isn't it the place of a parent to protect their child?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter whether you're in downtown New York City or rural Texas or in a county in North Dakota that's bigger than Rhode Island. A teacher still has the right and I would say the responsibility to help protect his or her students.
Or if they're in Sandy Hook, Connecticut.
Or Sandy Hook, Connecticut, where they died in the process.
That's my point. Columbine was not rural.
No.
My high school has got 2,000 students in a community of 60,000 people, a small community of 60,000 people surrounded by more communities of 60,000 people. There are no police on campus, or at least there weren't when I went there. So there is nobody there to stop it. I don't want this stopped in 2 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes after the police get there. I want it stopped now. I don't understand why how far the police are away matters. It doesn't. Sorry.
Well, I think we've kicked this one around a bit. Rachel, you got our gun quote this time, right?
Yes, I do. So that does wrap up our news items. Here's the gun quote. All governments suffer a recurring problem. Power attracts pathological personalities. It is not that power corrupts, but that power is magnetic to the corruptible. That's from author Frank Herbert. So hang on, everybody, and we'll be back with our defensive gun use segment.
Awesome. Frank Herbert, he's the author of Dune, by the way.
That's the guy.
Cool.
Which I must say I've never read. I am ignorant.
I'm listening to a it's like, let me pull up give me just a second here, guys. I'm listening to an audiobook. It is, as soon as it gets pulled back, Audible, there we go. The Bear and the Dragon, Tom Clancy. And the whole premise is that Jack Ryan, through a really odds situation and chain of events, gets into the presidency. And one of the quotes he's talking with his chief of staff is, power corrupts, and absolute power is actually kind of cool sometimes.
I have a comment from YouTube. Do you want me to hold it off to the email segment?
No, go for it, because I got the same thing in email. All right, yeah.
Simon says, Train, I was listening to you guys talking about how long it takes to get a pistol permit in your states. In New Jersey, it is legal for law-abiding citizens to get carry permit, but it is almost impossible for most people to get one. There are only 1,500 concealed permit holders in New Jersey, yet there are over 1 million gun owners in the state.
And we all know one of the permit holders, and that's Anthony Calandro. But he's right, extremely few. We're looking at, you guys covered it on the last show. In Washington, D.C., there is 8 for how many million? There's well over 1 million live in D.C. proper, right?
It was one so far. It's 1 for every 80,000 residents.
Yeah.
I don't know if it were a civil rights case and you said your admissions policy is a little skewed because you allow 1 per 80,000 of this group in. I hate to try and defend that in front of a court.
I don't think they're going to be able to, and it is going back to court.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
We got one more comment just came through, and Simon again says, it is important for gun owners to stay politically active and join their local pro-2A groups. If you don't like proposed bills like the New York bill to stop kids under 12 from going to gun shows, may pass into, and I don't see any more of it.
But New York Rifle and Pistol, why aren't you a member?
NJ2AS from where Simon's at. You should be a member.
Yes.
All right, DGUs, are we ready to fly with this?
Yeah.
Sure, let's do it.
And Simon, we've got, you're going to want, I just want to direct to Simon, you're going to want to stay tuned. We're going to be talking about more about this in the emails. Rachel, you're up. You want to go ahead and just bring us in whenever you're ready?
Sure, let's do it. Coming in 5. Hi, and welcome back to the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. This is our DGU segment, and we have several defensive gun use stories for you. Our first scenario happened a few hours before sunrise in the Southgate area near Detroit, Michigan. A 74-year-old man was woken up by the sound of breaking glass at the back of his home. The homeowner looked inside his home and then headed back to his bedroom where his wife was still in bed. Before the homeowner could call police, the intruder climbed through the back window and pointed a gun at the homeowner. Fortunately, the homeowner was armed as well. The homeowner shot the intruder. The homeowner was not injured. The intruder died at the scene. Police took fingerprints of the dead intruder, and a toxicology report is expected within a week. The investigation remains open, and the police do not expect charges against the homeowner. The homeowner said, and I quote, "It's a very quiet neighborhood. This isn't something that we normally have happen." End quote.
You know, we've read a number of DGUs, and there's always the quote, well, this was a quiet neighborhood. We don't have crime here, except that they do.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like this man was prepared for the unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I can say is, if, for goodness sake, if you're going to be investigating breaking glass, bring the gun with you out of the bedroom. I wouldn't go investigating myself that much, but I'm not going to say I wouldn't at all, because who knows? It could have been a couple of different things that caused the window to break. But if I'm going to investigate breaking glass, I'm going to have a handgun with me, or a rifle, or a shotgun. Or I'm going to have some type of defensive weapon with me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we keep reporting on these stories, and I wonder how many people go through a break-in and then are still anti-gun, anti-self-defense. You know, it seems that this would convert a lot of people. And you know, you talk about a quiet neighborhood. My other point was, you know, we reported on the Wisconsin guy who broke into the house and stood there and stared at him for 40 minutes before he tried to slash the guy's neck. It could happen. That was completely random. That was a completely random incident. He just said, "I'm going to go to this house," and you know, he was trying to figure out if he was a serial killer because his relative was. I mean, it doesn't matter where you are. You need to be prepared for self-defense, and a firearm is the best. There are other things.
Yeah.
This is the best.
You know, I wanted to take off on Gary's statement. If you think about it, Newtown, Connecticut is a very upscale part of Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
Sandy Hook School was in a nice neighborhood. The killer lived in a multi-million-dollar home, which, you know, lived with his mom, who he killed to get her guns. Stuff happens.
Everywhere.
And if there was been a resource officer or somebody who had been armed at Sandy Hook Elementary, there may not have been 26 kids killed. There may have been some people killed, but not 26.
Also, I want to mention that if somebody is looking to intentionally go to a home invasion for a reason other than random, are they going to go to the poor end of town where there is high crime, or are they going to go where the good stuff is at the better end of town?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I think nobody likes to be vulnerable or exposed and open to harm. And those of us here today, and probably many of our listeners, respond to that by being armed, by being ready for self-defense. But I think a lot of people who are anti-gun, they've responded to that fear of vulnerability by just shutting themselves to the idea they could be vulnerable, that they don't want to go there mentally. But when they are confronted with something like this in their neighborhood, I bet it does make them stop and think.
Excellent point.
Very good point.
Moving on, our next DGU comes to us from enter Domino's Pizza after 9 p.m.
Rachel?
They announced.
Rachel? Yeah,
Yes.
you cut out really bad. Could you back up just to the
Whoops.
beginning of that story again, please?
Sure. Yeah. Our next DGU is from Blytheville, Arkansas. 3 men wearing dark clothes and hoodies entered Domino's Pizza after 9 p.m. They announced a robbery and demanded the money in the cash register. Sarah Cherry is the store manager. She was in the back of the store and came to the counter when she heard the shouts. The robbers shot at Sarah as she came through the back door, but Sarah Cherry was armed and she shot back. The suspects ran. No one was injured. Police are looking for the suspects.
I forget the name of the pizza chain where one of their drivers was assaulted and they moved her into the store. Here they have someone who was actually in management and she was armed. I wonder if she will face termination because of store policy about bearing arms.
Unfortunately, with Domino's Pizza, I believe she will.
This was, I think they were saying this was the second time in the last several months this store had been robbed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, if I was an employer in that area, I would be looking her up now and see if she wants a job.
Right.
Especially if I ran a pizza joint, you bet.
Yeah. This next story is from John's neck of the woods in western North Carolina. A neighbor called John Painter Monday to tell him that a suspicious car was in his driveway. When Mr. Painter arrived home, he found his door pried open and Joel McMinn, age 35, inside. Painter grabbed his pistol and ordered McMinn to the floor. He then called 911. When McDowell County deputies arrived, they charged McMinn with felony breaking and entering. Rochelle Bailey, the McDowell County Sheriff's Department spokesperson, said, "Your top priority should be safety. If you can detain the suspect safely, that's okay. Quote, if not, they should always just go away, go back to their car, go to their neighbor's house, whatever. Call 911 and let us deal with it." Close quote. She added that concealed carry permits were on the rise and that intruders should think twice.
I love the quote from her, and I think, Gary, I'm going to be shocked if you don't agree with me on this. Don't go searching your own. Don't try to clear your house alone when there's obviously been a forced door. Good on the guy that it turned out his way, but that is something I would, if I knew there was nobody that was supposed to be in that house, meaning everybody that I cared about I knew was not in that house, I'm not going in there.
Paul,
Well,
let me paint a trap for you. You see somebody in your house. They're going through your things. The temptation is to say, "What the heck are you doing?" and step into the home. What
You're right.
you don't see is the guy coming from the back room who's behind you.
Yeah. Right.
Cops work in pairs. Most police won't clear a house. They'll send in a dog.
Right.
Right.
Criminals don't work alone as much anymore.
Yep.
And there's a suspicious car in your driveway. You're going to drive home to check it out, then call 911? I'm sorry.
Like I said, I'm glad it worked out for the guy. And the other thing that comes to mind is John Holloway was on the show a long time ago. I think before anybody that's with me now was on the show. But John and I had a talk about holding people at gunpoint. And it's not as easy as you think. Guns are not light. And holding that gun out and level for a long time, you better been working those arms out, buddy.
Okay, you just talk squirrel. The concealed carry holder, I think, in Dallas, who stopped a domestic violence incident that was just happened right in front of him on the street.
Mm-hmm.
Basically said, 1, my arms are getting tired while I wait for the police. 2, if I have my arms out, I tend to look like the bad guy. He went to a compressed ready because the assailant was now proned out on the ground, and he went, I just went to a compressed ready, so I can react instantly. It'll take me a fraction of a second to get a sight picture, but it keeps me from looking like I'm about to immediately shoot someone, and therefore the cops don't have to shoot me first and ask questions later.
Good
One more thing I want to say real quick. Get to a Masad Ayub
Yes.
Mag 40 class. It is discussed there. I cannot say what he said. I've been sworn not to. But get there. You need the information in that class.
I honestly don't remember what he said, but I talk about in my classes. Excuse me. Put them on the floor. Put them on the ground, face down. Have your gun at a low ready, compressed ready, and as the police approach, holster. He's not going to get up when the police are coming. So and the police can have their guns drawn. Like, there's a timing. Think about these things before you get to that point. But there's a timing to this that I honestly believe could be very easily managed without looking like the gunman. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Get to a Masad Ayub class. Rob, we got one more, man.
This is another good news story. 2 University of Central Florida students are lucky that they live off campus. Noor Skargi and his girlfriend, Sable Namey, were the victims of violent home invaders on Wednesday. The intruders knocked on their apartment door and then forced their way inside when Skargi opened the door. They forced him to the ground and put a gun to his head. The intruders announced they were going to kill Mrs. Namey. She retreated to her bedroom where she retrieved a revolver. Quote, "The only thing I could think was, I need to figure out a way to protect us," Namey said. "I grabbed the gun from out here in my closet. I pointed it at them because he has busted through my door." Close quote. Both the intruders ran when they saw Mrs. Namey with the revolver. She said her father had given her the revolver for protection as she went off to school. Police later said that the intruder's weapon was actually a pellet gun.
Yeah.
Another
Take
case.
turns because you guys are all going in on this. I can hear it.
I forget which show it is, but there's another podcast that wants to give these people Academy Awards because they're acting as though they have a gun when they only have a toy. Of course, criminals aren't the brightest move in the world, but this is particularly stupid for a criminal to use a fake gun in an area where there is a real one.
I guess when it comes to sentencing, maybe you get a few years off because you didn't have an actual firearm.
That's not true, Rob.
Really? I don't know.
Really, it's not. If you are putting people in most jurisdictions, like not all, I'm not a lawyer, but in a lot of jurisdictions, if you use a fake firearm and have people in fear for their life, it's the same charges as a firearm.
Okay.
As it should be.
I'm just thinking you can end up dead no matter what.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
Yes.
you can be killed with a pellet gun.
Yep.
Witness the guy in Walmart who got swatted.
Ooh.
Well, I was talking about you could get killed with a pellet gun another way, but you're right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they're then totally going squirrel here, but there were air rifles down at SHOT Show that are easily able to take down hogs, deer.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I do want to mention that we post each of our news and defensive gun use articles at PoliteSocietyPodcast.com. Please take a minute to share them with a friend. And also, I'm not going to promise it's going to happen starting this episode, but starting soon, you'll be able to share independent segments, including the DGU segments, with your friends off of our website there at PoliteSocietyPodcast.com. We're going to have our listener email segment coming up, and we'll do that right after this. Dead on at 15 minutes, guys.
Oh, you mean so after it's edited, it's going to be too short?
Leave them wanting more, right?
Record once, edit twice. Right, okay.
Speaking of editing, are you going to take a shot at editing this one, Rob? You got the software, right?
I don't know. I've never done it. Yeah, I could. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
I could.
Okay.
Uh,
We'll talk off the air.
How about I have Gary? I'm just typing names. Gary takes the first one, and you take the second one, Paul, since it's literally addressed to you.
Yep.
Okay. Is there a 3?
There's 5 of us here.
South Dakota. Ooh, well, okay.
I could take them both.
I'll give that to you too.
All right. So who's got the first one? Gary, you want to bring us in again?
It's what I live for.
Yeah, I know you do. I just know it.
In 72 seconds.
71, 70.
Welcome back to the Polite Society podcast, brought to you by the Firearms Policy Coalition. This is our email segment and show close. The first email is from Chris. He wrote in and sent us a link to a story that says that a bill has been introduced in Congress that would make it a felony to own body armor. Thanks for writing in, Chris. I love it when the listeners send us links in email, as it seems that they have our backs. And honestly, with us not having a show for almost a week, it can be easy for some stories to slip by us. Honestly, I think that Bill Clinton has a lot more of a chance to be elected Pope than that legislation getting through the House of Representatives. But we will keep our eyes on it.
A bill like that was passed in California. I think it's being amended and extended. It's politicians dialing for anti-gun dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, how many criminals go in, do an attack, home invasion, wearing body armor? Very few, if any.
I can think of 2.
Some bank robberies,
yes.
but home invasions.
Yes.
Yes.
One instance where 2 bank robbers in L.A. were wearing body armor.
But
That's
those
the only
bank
one I can
robbers,
think of.
yeah.
And then the ones in Florida.
Okay, there's 2 instances.
Also bank robberies, right.
Yeah. So,
Right.
I mean, it's just not that big of a problem.
Well, but that's not the point. With all due respect, Paul, that's not the point. This goes back to my rant a few weeks ago about the magazine restrictions. I said, why are you restricting the good guy who is protecting people to only 10 rounds? Why would you restrict good people from being able to protect themselves from gunfire? It's not like guns don't exist. You should be able to do everything you can to protect yourself. I'm sure there has been an incident where a burglar has used a home alarm system to alert them of police coming in to raid their house. Should we ban alarm systems? It's ridiculous. Let people protect themselves. Let people enforce their own safety, because you're not doing it with this type of legislation.
Yeah, you're preaching the
I like
choir
that
here,
rant. Totally like it.
Now, I have not looked into personally. Have any of you looked into buying body armor?
Yeah, they don't make big boy sizes.
Okay.
I occasionally do, at least for plate carrier or looking at plates to go with a plate carrier. I mean, it's not cheap, and I've seen stuff taking, was it AR-500 steel, and then you coat it with rhino coat to essentially make your own. But I think I remember something from Masada Ayub making the suggestion that you have at least like a plate carrier on your, at the foot of your bed, and then you hear a noise in the night, you flip that over you, get your gun, put your muffs on, the Peltors that actually amplify noise but cut out gunfire.
Right.
so you can hear more noises in your house, and you're more protected.
Hey, Gary, I'm giving you a 6
On.
on the rant.
Oh, the rant. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I expect better next week.
It was not prepared.
No,
It was not a prepared statement.
Look at this is a freestyle. This is the freestyle rant
That's
segment.
right.
The
Can I get
prepared
a 1
rant
point
statement
up for the
is a
improv?
different segment.
Before we move on, I do want to. I'm just guessing here. I'm guessing that for what they're going to, because it was Class 3 armor, is what they were looking to outlaw.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're looking at several $100s at the minimum for a setup. This is not something the bad guys are going to go get. By and large, this is again, and with the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, which is where this thing sits in committee, and where it will die. Well, like was said, there's a bigger chance that Bill Clinton is our next pope than that this thing gets through to Barack Obama, who would sign it, but it'll never get there.
Yeah.
Our next email, then, George in Houston wrote in. He says, "Hi, Paul. Enjoy the podcast very much. I'm in Houston, so I'm following the Texas situation. Since you are soliciting suggestions, I have a couple. Number one, when doing a news piece on a replica gun incident, you might get used to saying the gun turned out to be a replica or fake or pellet gun. The antis never say this, implying the police or whoever knew it was not a real gun or should have made sure first. I don't know how, maybe by getting shot." I'm going to pause here just for a second. And George, I hope you noticed back in our DGU back there, we took your advice. We did just that. And then number two, he says, one of your callers said he listened to a lot of podcasts, as do I. Now, what I do is speed up a replay using DPC or digital pitch control by using a Sony AX12. Doggone it. By using a Sony AX-412 portable device. There are others, like the Sony BX140, which is cheaper. I'm not an iPod person, so I don't know if that is available there. Many podcasts can be heard reasonably well at 120 or 130% speed. DPC seems to be relatively rare in the overall player universe, and you have to hunt it down. The Sonys I mentioned are no longer made, but are available on eBay. The smaller BX140 can be had for around $25. Thanks, George S., Houston, Texas. Thanks for writing in, George. Again, we did take your suggestion, and we mentioned your first part in the DGU segments. Secondly, for your second one, for listeners, that'd be cool. I'm a truck driver. I listen to podcasts about 10 to 11 hours a day when I'm not listening to audiobooks. So I can handle regular speed. I got the time.
Well, I know with the iPod Classic, you can't speed it up, but if you have the iPod Touch or you're using an iPhone to listen to it, you can listen to it at 1.5 or twice the speed. And I'm sure we sound really good at double the speed.
Inside baseball for those that don't watch us on YouTube as we record this. We get speeded up when we go out on podcast. There's a bit of software we use that cut out the pauses in between our words. More specifically, we use that to take out long gaps in silence because we don't want to jump over each other. We usually leave a 2 to 3 second gap when we're ending stories to make sure everybody said what they want to say. So it all gets compressed down when we go through our editing software. So what you're hearing on podcast is already accelerated. So think about that if you accelerate us again.
I'm an Android user, and the app Pocket Cast lets you speed things up. It does the pitch modulation so it just speeds them up rather than pitches them up. On the other hand, sometimes I go to a different app just for the pleasure of hearing Paul sound like a chipmunk.
Oh, my iPod app in my iPhone, I can change it to 1.5 times or 2 times speed. It's right in the thing, and I listen to all audiobooks faster than what they were recorded at also. So there's I don't know I don't know that you actually have to buy an additional device, but there are that is a good suggestion. That's the way I listen to things.
We got one more email I want to get to. And this one we got in just as we were doing show notes for the show when my email inbox rang, and this one came in. Dr. Cliff writes in, I recently discovered your podcast and find it very enlightening. There's very little mindless banter. He doesn't watch us on YouTube, apparently. There's very little mindless banter, and I do like the format. I'm from Aberdeen, South Dakota, but recently moved to rural Minnesota for work reasons. It's very exciting to hear this quality work coming out of Sioux Falls. I thank you for your time and efforts, and will continue listening. Sincerely, Dr. Cliff. Thanks for writing in, Dr. Cliff, and thanks for the kind words. Yeah, some of us South Dakota Hicks can get some stuff done, I guess.
Dr. Cliff, look up Dr. Adine.
Yes, very much so. I do want to mention we do have 2 voicemails that are sitting ready to go. They've come in since the last time I had the full studio set up over at ABN, and it is really difficult to get those in on a setup where I'm in my truck. So we're going to hold those. We'll play them both when in a few weeks I'm back at ABN and we're able to do a regular show from there. But I do want to encourage you, keep sending in the voicemails. We love getting them, and we'll be playing them back as soon as we can. Call into us, 605-215-1438. You got to let the thing ring for quite a while, but eventually you will hear my voice telling you, hey, this is the show's voicemail. And go ahead and leave your message up to 3 minutes, and we'll get it on the air for you. Rob, do you have any new posts from your Slowfax blog you want to mention, man?
I have 2 that I can mention. I wrote an article called Rules for Them and Different Rules for You If You Have a Gun. I stole it right from the last podcast. I noticed how many of the anti-gun public figures have armed security. What can I say? I'm weak, and that post wrote itself after I saw the pictures. Here's something inside baseball that our listeners might find fascinating. Most of the pictures of armed guards standing with celebrities like Michael Bloomberg and Rosie O'Donnell, the pictures have been scrubbed from the online image collections. It took some Google View from our friend Miguel Gonzalez to find some.
Miguel does a fantastic job. I wish I had his Google counts. I wish I had his connections. He does one thing that Miguel does is, I want to say this, and it may even be the right term. He very much trolls the anti-gunners.
He does.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Oh man.
He infuriates them faster than with logic, and just sets them all a Twitter on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
About this article where it shows one set of rules for them and another set of rules for us. One of the anti-gunners, and again, from the article we posted, said, tackle anybody that you see that has a gun. Here's that video that shows, this is from Fox News, and it shows the black 62-year-old gun owner get tackled by this 40-year-old anti-gun nut when he walks into Walmart. I don't know. Did you want to talk about that?
You guys talked about that on the last show, and I do want to add I had a couple things I want to add to that. If you are a concealed carry permit holder, please, 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 please keep your head on a swivel, no matter if you're concealed, if you're an open carrier, no matter how you carry, if you carry, be really, really, really alert. These nuts are out there. And if you watch the video, I have not yet. I'm going on what Rob and Gary were saying on the pre-show as we were getting ready to do this. The guy was tackled, and Gary, am I right? They disarmed him?
It really looked like that to me. Obviously, it's security footage, so it's not high def or anything, but it looks like that the first guy tackled him. He was, as we're told, yelling, he's got a gun, he's got a gun. another person jumped in, and it looks to me in the video as if they actually disarmed him. There's something he takes from the guy and hands to somebody else off camera, and during that couple of seconds, it looks like he was disarming him. I don't know for sure, but that's what it looked like to me.
I didn't realize until today that the guy who had been tackled was African American. And you have to wonder, was it racism on the part of racism combined with anti-gun activism that caused him to tackle a 62-year-old man who is legally concealed carrying?
It did put him in jail.
As well it should have.
Oh, yeah.
I consider it a hate crime.
Regardless of his skin color, yes.
Yes.
It's a bigotry.
Mm-hmm.
Just so we can eventually finish this podcast, I have a second article coming out where I compared our First Amendment rights with our Second Amendment rights. What would it be like if the government treated our right to speech and to assembly the same way they treat our right to be armed for self-defense? We'd be offended if we had to ask the state for a permit to speak. In some states, we'd need a permit to speak in our home. And once we got that permit, then there are further restrictions on the number of words that we can speak at one time. This is because the government can't let us speak too fast or too loudly. These speech restrictions, of course, only apply to citizens in my world. People who speak for the government can use all the words they want, and they speak very loudly indeed. Now listen to the excuses if we were to draw this parallel. Government says it's only regulating our right to speak, not infringing on it. Does that sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it sounds absurd when I describe these restrictions to our right to speak, but that's exactly the way we infringe on our right of self-defense today. The article is called "Some Rights Are More Equal Than Others."
Rob, can you do me a favor? Would you post that article on my Facebook page when it comes out? Because I want to share that. I've had it in my mind that I needed to write some article on that, and I included a rant on this in my speech that I gave. Not a rant, but just like an explanation of, this is a good argument for Second Amendment rights, talking about First Amendment or searches and seizures. What if we had to bribe government officials to keep from having searches and seizures? Just different things like that. So I'm so glad that you wrote that article.
Okay. Yes. I've posted twice today. I'll post it early tomorrow morning and put it on the page and on your page.
Awesome, thanks.
John, tell me what you've been doing with your blog. Oh, Gary, I'm sorry.
You bring up an interesting point, and people always, when we bring up this particular argument, and your article is a very well written way of explaining it. But people always say we need to regulate guns because we make it illegal to yell fire in a crowded theater. I call BS. It is not illegal to yell fire in a crowded theater.
Right.
It's illegal to cause chaos in a crowded theater. But
when there's no fire.
Right. But your speech is not restricted. And they say, oh, we should restrict guns. We already make it illegal to kill people with them. We already make it illegal to rob people with them. So I don't think we need to, like you say, limit them to smaller magazines, different guns, special guns, only these kind of guns, only this smart gun. And it drives me crazy when people go, well, if the First Amendment was regulated, it is already regulated. You can't yell fire, which is total BS. There is no law.
Well, Gary, what we do is we hold people responsible if they yell fire in a crowded theater and there is no fire.
100%.
We treat firearms owners exactly the same way. In fact, we apocryphally say every bullet you fire comes with a lawyer attached to it.
Right, we treat firearm criminals exactly the same way. But if there was a fire, they would want us to yell fire.
Yep.
Same way, if there was a crime happening, They would want us to do everything in our power to stop it, including pulling our own gun.
Gary brings up a point that I've been thinking about. What if the federal courts protected the Second Amendment as strongly as they did the unenumerated right to abortion?
Ooh.
Yeah. Say that again. I want everybody to hear it.
What if the federal courts protected the enumerated Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms as strongly as they have protected the unenumerated, unspecified right in the Constitution, the right to privacy and the right to an abortion?
Well, this is a good place, John. Is there anything you'd mention about your blog? And it sounds like you just
Actually,
came up with
not about that, but I did do
Not
a couple
yet.
of posts earlier this week on the confirmation hearings for Loretta Lynch, and she is President Obama's nominee to replace Eric Holder as Attorney General. I pointed out that Operation Fast and Furious, not a botched gun-running operation, mind you, surfaced in this hearing, starting with Chairman Chuck Grassley's opening statements and continuing the next day with testimony from reporter Cheryl Atkinson and law professor Jonathan Turley of George Washington University. Atkinson described how the DOJ froze her out over her reporting, even though it was 100% factually accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Turley, who admits to being a liberal who voted for Obama and who likes Obama on a lot of things, attacked the administration's use of executive privilege to withhold documents concerning Fast and Furious from the House. He also attacked the refusal to prosecute, the DOJ's refusal to prosecute Holder over his contempt citation by the House of Representatives.
Did any of you read the DOJ's Vox-splaining the hacking attempt on Cheryl Atkinson? They said she was
No,
hacked. It was just that the space key was stuck down.
Yes, yeah.
Oh,
Oh
please.
God, that was made for the headline surfer liberal who just would swallow anything. By the way, for that same person, I have this island off California. It's for sale.
Oh goodness.
All right. Before we go, I do want to mention we're working on some really cool guests for upcoming shows. I've been exchanging texts, emails, phone calls with Ben Branham, with Mike Hughes. He's with Next Level Training. He's the founder of Next Level Training. They're the people that make the CERT pistols. Grant Cunningham, Ken Kowalski, Chaz Murray, and a whole bunch of others. We're going to have a bunch of really cool interviews coming up over the next several weeks, so you're certainly going to want to stay tuned for those. I think that, though, that does wrap up another episode of the Polite Society podcast. Rob, Gary, and Rachel, I'm guessing you guys are going to be here for the Wednesday show?
No,
No.
I'm out for the next week.
Oh.
I will be there for the Wednesday show.
I will not.
Rachel?
I was deciding whether I was going to be there or possibly a Wednesday evening. So I was in iffy.
Okay.
You're
Well,
a
there-
Iffy. I've never
I
met an
didn't
Iffy
realize
before.
that.
There may or may not be a Wednesday show for 309. That may have to wait for next
Yeah.
weekend. But, Gary, you'll be back next weekend, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know whether I'll be here Wednesday night or not. It's a 50-50 shot at this point. And so I guess that means a 50-50 shot whether we'll have a show. And we will definitely have one next weekend, Sunday, same bat time, same bat channel. And I'm sure everybody wants to go watch the Super Bowl in 15 minutes. So until the next time, everybody.
Stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
Awesome.
That's a wrap. Oh, do I need to record the...
Yes. Just fire away whenever you want to.
Okay. This show copyright Paul Lathrop and the Polite Society Podcast 2015.
Do it one more time, but this show copyright 2015.
Oh, this show copyright 2015. Okay. This show copyright 2015 Paul Lathrop and the Polite Society Podcast.
Perfect.
Can you
All
take
right.
us off the air for a minute?
I am going to do that. Before I do, I want to thank you guys for watching. We still do have some viewers. Thank you for sticking with us for almost 2 hours while we recorded this mess. I do want to mention our advertisers before we go again. ABN Army Surplus, Concealment Solutions, Crusader Weaponry, New Jersey Second Amendment Society, the Firearms Safety Institute, and the Firearms Policy Coalition. Come join us 3:30 p.m. next Sunday. We'll be back. See you, everybody.